Welcome to Mo's Market Pulse. I'm your host, Sara Mokaram, founder of Mo Digital Solutions, where we help businesses hit their revenue goals and thrive. On this podcast, we talk with industry leaders about their business, market trends, growth strategies, and what's ahead. Today, we have Chris Basey, CEO and founding partner of Comedia Design. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chris.
Hi, that's good to be here.
So you've built a pretty fascinating business with Comedia Design, blending creative execution, strategy, and investment through your creative capital model. I'm excited to dig into how you think about the product growth and what's next, but I'd really like to start by just helping listeners understand who you are and how Comedia came to be. So can you take us back? What was the original vision when you were thinking about Comedia, and what problem were you trying to solve at the time?
So when we started, so we're just over 10 years old. We hit the 10-year anniversary kind of the beginning of March. And we spun out of a startup that three of us were in, and that startup was looking to get acquired, and it got acquired, and we did not something that we wanted to be part of. It was moving to a company we weren't interested in. And so we decided to start Comedia as back then, an innovation agency. So we were looking to solve future problems by looking at current technology, where the technology will be in the next few years, and building out prototypes to show the potential, look at the North Stars and work backwards from there, find the MVPs to build it out, and then kind of have this future casting vision as to where the company might get to. And we started with Vodafone, I think was one of our first innovation clients, Hightail. And then we moved to work with Ericsson, and G Aviation, and NEC, and other large kind of innovation or companies that had an innovation arm that they really wanted to kind of move forward. So that was the first kind of iteration of Comedia, and that was the first sort of 5 years. Once COVID hit, the innovation budget's generally the first to go. And so we got hit with most of our clients kind of pausing or vastly reducing their investment into that. And so we kind of pivoted slightly, a similar thing, but now we kind of more of a end-to-end digital product solution. I do a lot of work in digital physical, enterprise SaaS. So it moved doing innovative work inside current platforms or current products, rather than the innovation work where we would go from blank canvas through to proof of concepts.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of where we.
Yeah. And I know that you've worked with everyone from startups to large, Fortune 10 companies. Did that range of clients shape the services you offer or change the path of the business at all?
So we kind of mostly have a background. I was a consultant before that at larger companies like VMware, Facebook. And so kind of when we started looking at startups initially because we thought that would be a good market to go after. It's kind of need a lot of help quickly. We fell into the enterprise thing because we got introed into Vodafone, and that was our second client, I think. And so we started realizing that there's actually a huge amount of opportunity inside enterprise to really build innovative work, to move them forward far faster than they can internally for various reasons, not because of talent reasons, but because of internal politics, or everybody is heads down on the current thing that needs to get built to drive revenue for the next quarter. They don't have time to stop and look kind of what does a North Star look like and how do we get there? And so kind of the company got shaped that way. And we kind of split into two different arms for the most part. It's either the Fortune 500 companies or it's early stage startup. So we kind of build those two kind of arms, and there's more crossover than you might think between them. And the type of work is similar. The pace is different. Stakeholders are different. But yeah, it was just kind of, we just kind of felt that was where our comfort zone was. The SMB market felt for the sort of services that we provide. Once you have enough funding, once you're in Series A or B, you're probably built out a team at that point. And so we felt like the value that we provide is less at that stage, but it becomes greater at the kind of the small stage or the enterprise stage.
And for those who might not be as familiar with Comedia, would you just give kind of an overview of the services that you provide?
Yeah, so we're an end-to-end digital product company. So we have from strategy to vision through to UI, UX, design, content, and then ultimately development. So we can kind of take an idea from a literal post-it note all the way through to a fully fleshed and deployed product. Like NEC was an example. We started with an idea from them, and then 4 years later, we have this big IoT product that was out being sold. So where we prefer to build is that end-to-end piece. We can come in and help across your entire product line. But if you just need design help or you just need development help, we're happy to come in at that level as well. But we kind of think of ourselves as kind of a holistic design team in a box, essentially. or a product team in a box rather, so that we can come in and kind of slot in and really kind of move you forward quickly.
And so now that we kind of understand where you started and what Comedia does, I'm hoping to shift now to talk about the market that you're in and the shifts that you're seeing. So, from your vantage point, what are the biggest changes happening in the UX and digital product space over the past few years? And are clients expecting different things now than they were, say, 5 years ago or so?
I mean, the obvious answer to that is AI, right? The kind of like the changes that we've seen with the advent of AI, Gen AI, has been huge. I think the expectation is interesting because I think initially it felt like, oh, this is the magic box. I can put stuff into this magic box and it's going to spit out everything that I need. So there was a lot of fear and confusion of like, well, basically a design job's going, a content job's going. I think we're seeing now a little bit more of a nuanced view of it. I think seeing that AI is a good tool. It increases efficiencies. You can do a lot of the stuff faster, but ultimately it's kind of, if rubbish goes in, rubbish comes out. So I think where we look at it as an agency is where can we use it to drive more efficiencies? Where can we be at the top of the pyramid, if you like, of like we providing, it's what I call it, article about it, like the human excellence layer that sits above all of the AI. So we can get a lot of outputs, but if you can't and don't have the skill or the experience to take those outputs and use them in an effective way, it doesn't really matter what the AI spits out. And as design and development and content gets more and more commoditized and good enough, depending on your client, right? Good enough might be good enough for them. It's where can you take those outputs and really kind of find the differences? Because otherwise we're going to have a whole bunch of homogenized products, right? Everyone's going to build the same thing. It's going to look the same. It's going to do the same. No one's going to stand out, and we're not really going to move any of this stuff forward. And that's ultimately going to be an issue a few years down the line when we suddenly realize like, oh, hang on, none of this actually functions. It's not built by humans, so therefore it's not for humans. And so it's interesting to see where that shift comes out in the next few years. But that's kind of where we're looking as AI being a force multiplier and kind of explaining to clients that, yeah, stuff can get done faster now, but you still need to have that expertise to understand it. Because as I say, we started off as an innovation agency, and one of our big selling points is that we would build prototypes, like actually build them in app that functioned along narrative paths very, very quickly. Well, that doesn't really exist as a selling point now because everyone can do a lot of these things very, very quickly. So the question is, how much value can you put into those, both at the generation level of the AI and the output level of the AI? So that's going to be where the biggest shift continues to happen for the next few years. And I think from an agency perspective, it's going to be interesting to see who adapts to that better. And the idea of, I mean, traditionally, growth for an agency was headcount. That's how we measured it. We need to get to 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, right? This is how we're measuring growth. And then that growth metric's totally different now. I think now it's like, let's have a core group of experts who are world-class at what they do, bring in other partners as need be, or have a bench of contractors as need be to bring it in. But that small core group is going to be where the agency model sits. I think kind of your larger, we'll see, but it feels to me like your larger consultancies like the Accentures, Deloitte, RGA, which was recently acquired, are going to struggle a little bit more because their overheads are so high that a lot of what clients are paying for goes to the offices or the other pieces. So I think now that's going to be the big shift in certainly digital product and probably digital marketing as well. How can we have small teams that can run fast and deploy much, much faster than they could before? But having that level of expertise that means that you can see where things are going, where you can understand the data that's coming out and really apply it effectively.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And there are hundreds of agencies and design studios out there. So, how do you think about the competition, and where do you think Comedia truly leads or really stands out in that competition?
Yeah, the competition is interesting. I think it depends who you feel you're competing against. So there's different markets, right? So I think it's looking at who's in a similar market. So for example, we don't do marketing websites particularly, right? So there's a lot of marketing, digital marketing design agencies. And so they have their piece and we don't go after those. So we can kind of ignore those in the sense that they're not playing in the same space. I think increasingly, if you look at the competition, better together, I think is, especially given how difficult things have been over the last few years in the agency space, of building out partnerships rather than feeling like we're all competing against each other. Where are the opportunities that we can help each other, right? So, for example, I don't know, say, for example, like, well, we've tapped out on design, but somebody comes in and they want to design the design projects. Like, well, we can go to a couple of people that we know. Do you have some people that we can co-pitch with this on, or can we use? So I think rather than kind of looking at this competitive landscape of like, how do we beat these people to this? I think increasingly smaller agencies need to come together to form some kind of collective, or at least a very loose coalition to help. So I try to think of it not so much as how we're competing as to how can we all work together to get the better work, to get the good work, to do the things that we want to do. I mean, that being said, we're going to, we are pitching against each other sometimes. And I think at that point, it's just, that's not going to change. I think it's just where the competition sits is where you feel you need to be at. And as long as you're true to what you do and the type of work that you do, and you go after the clients that speak to the mission of your agency, I think that's fine. As to where we're going to go, we've kind of like honed in on various verticals, right? And those are the areas that we want to target. But yeah, I don't think of competition so much as coalition.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of partnering and really lifting one another up, right? And being able to work together. So I know that you've mentioned kind of anti-consultancy before. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we kind of, yes, that's kind of an older article, but yeah, I mean, it still exists, right? I think the anti-consultancy, we kind of talked about ourselves in that way, because if you look at the Accentures, the McKinseys, the PwCs, the Deloittes, etc., and I use those because we do a lot of enterprise clients, right? We have a lot of kind of the Fortune 10, Fortune 100 companies, and they're very good at bringing in business analysts and management and running design workshops and doing a lot of design thinking. And we looked at a lot of those things, and we've been involved in a lot of those things. We've done a lot of those things. But if you're getting to the point where you're being charged $500,000 for a 50-slide PowerPoint and no actionable concrete product coming out of it, we felt that that was a disservice to the people who are working for the agency, and certainly a disservice to the client. So we kind of talked about the anti-consultancy because our thing was to be the makers of the thing, right? Whatever it is you need to build, let's figure out those narrative paths. What does it need to do? Okay, we're going to build you a prototype that works inside a mobile app, right? We'll use TestFlight to kind of deliver it to people for testing. So rather than talking about it and having nice, pretty slides, here's an actual prototype. Here's a proof of concept that works. So we kind of try and look at it that way of kind of getting to actionable product as fast as possible. Stop talking about it and keep doing it. So that's kind of where that idea of the anti-consultancy came in.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing. And so I want to shift now to what you're doing to grow, how you think about scaling the business and getting your message out there. How do you define growth internally? Is it revenue? Is it, I know you mentioned the team size was kind of the old model there, or something else?
Yeah, revenue, I think, is the easiest metric, right? Are you looking to grow whatever your metric is, 20%, 30%, whatever your year-on-year revenue target growth is, that's how we're measuring growth. It's definitely not on headcount. So yeah, revenue and margin, right? Those are the two. Can we increase our margin? Can we increase our revenue? And how do we need to do that? Or how are we going to go about doing that? And that's, for us, growth looks, as I said before, is kind of like, here's the core group of Comedia, but we need a brand, or we need social, or we need content, or we need whatever it is. Who do we know that we can bring in and add to those? So we started with an agency called Pinwheel, started this collective called Ascend, which we're part of, which is 5 agencies, which is social, brand, product, content, and media buying. And so we're kind of like a collection of those 5. So no matter what a client needs, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of those, we can deliver a solution to that. And I think that's the way to go for me for growth for smaller agencies. I think kind of building out coalitions, and especially if there's lanes where it's always going to blur, but we don't really do brand. We have done brand, we can do brand, but it's not core to what we do. So if someone has a brand need, we can bring in an assembly, we can bring in our brand partner, a rival. It's like, okay, we can slot those in and create that bigger agency without having the overhead of kind of, now we need 50 people, 100 people. So I think growth now looks like partnerships rather than growing your individual studio.
I love that. So then you're able to have someone come in and you work with them on something, but then if it's not in your wheelhouse, then you can offer it to another company, right? And vice versa. So you're able to get a lot of word of mouth and referrals.
So partly it's a referral thing, so we can refer things to each other, but also we're trying to kind of build it so that we have somebody who's running that piece of like selling assembly. So going into companies going like, we're selling assembly as an agency, and we're very transparent. It's 5 agencies underneath this, but we're pitching assembly to you, and you need this bit, and this bit. right? And so at the beginning, we'll do some content and some branding work. And once that's done, we'll bring in Comedia. They'll help build the product. And so we're trying to sell that as a de facto agency.
Got it. Okay. I see what you're saying. And have you had any other channels to get the word out about you and onboard clients outside of this strategy that have either worked or surprised you and didn't work at all?
The biggest thing for me, because I'm a designer, but I sort of ended up running BD essentially for Comedia since COVID hit, is network. The number one thing, there's various things we can go out and I can use Clay or I can use Apollo and I can build out some AI workflows and send a bunch of emails, which is very hit missy, especially with the AI email stuff. I find it to be very cold and doesn't feel like me. So the thing has been network. So I spend a lot of time talking to people, just connecting, just to chat, not trying to sell necessarily anything, but building out my network over the last 10 years of Comedia, right, which has got more and more extensive. And being genuine and having actual connections with people because you want to hear what they have to say, you're interested in what their company does, or you're interested in what they do, you're interested in them as people, and having genuine networking connections with people, not transactional, has been a good kind of way for us to grow and be kind of, hey, we're top of mind, right? You're pinging, and sometimes it's serendipitous, like, oh God, Chris, I was just thinking of you. We actually need to do this thing. Let's chat. Or like, oh, we don't have anything at the moment, but let's keep chatting. And then eventually these things hit. So that's most of kind of where we do our BD for growth in clients. We do a lot of content, more and more articles, a lot of LinkedIn. But those are the main pieces that we kind of look to for growth. We're small, right? So we don't need this big sales team. We don't need a lot of people kind of like pounding the digital pavements. But yeah, it's just getting top of mind, some thought leadership, and just connecting.
And I know you've worked, or I've read that you've worked with some startups through equity deals. How do you go about evaluating, which startups to take on and invest in? Do you guys have some sort of, criteria that you go after or certain targets that you're looking for?
Not particularly. I think we treat it how a lot of VCs would treat it. Is the problem area interesting? Is there a gap in this market that could be exploited by this startup? Is this founding team the team that can do that? So even if all these things are right, like there's definitely a market for it. The addressable market is big enough. There's a gap in the market that this fills that nobody does as well as they do, or as well as their plan is. And then ultimately, are these the people who we think can do it? And if we believe in all of those things, then we will offer, not always, depending on where our cash flow is, depending on where our agencies at any time is also a factor. But then we'll offer our creative capital model, which is 70% cash and 30% equity. And the equity typically goes into a safe note, which will convert in the later round. We like it a lot. It aligns incentives, right? Because we're actually on the cap table. So we are literally invested in the success of their product and their company. And for the startup, it reduces their cash burn and also brings in a partner, again, who is on the cap table. We have a vested interest in the success. So it's been good. We don't have many of those. We've done a few of those over the years, but they've been like, and they're always usually the most fun projects that we've done.
Yeah,
People are excited to be on them.
that's a great way to align for both of you guys to move the project forward. So I'd love to understand what challenges you're working through right now. So of course, every founder and company hits certain friction points. So what's the biggest frustration or bottleneck you're facing right now, whether internally or with client expectations or something else?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing since 2020 has been the economy. If we look at like 23 historically across client services was a brutal year. Very, very difficult. Obviously, 20 and 21 were hard, but that was expected. 22 was okay, and 23 came as a surprise to a lot of us, right? But the tech sector took a real hit. This year, I think we're seeing something similar. The Q1, typically, when I talked to other agencies, was pretty good for everyone. There was lots of work, lots of interest. My calendar was full. And then when the tariff talks started happening, we've seen a lot of pushback. We've seen a lot of companies being like, okay, well, we need to just pause because we don't know what's going to happen. We're not sure what our budget is now. Everything's changing. Everything's in flux. So I think the biggest challenge at the moment is navigating that, which is practically impossible because it changes so frequently at the moment that until there's more solid ground beneath our feet, nobody really sure where that's going to net out. So for us, it's looking at where outside of the US, there are places outside the US, projects outside the US that we can tap into. So we're starting to look a bit further afield because all of our clients have been US based, or at least the projects have been US based. So we're starting to look further afield, right? Is there anything in the Middle East that's interesting? There's some stuff there. What's happening in Europe? Are there places there that we can look? And the challenges there, of course, is it's different work culture, it's a different value prop, it's a different financial setup because the EU versus day rates versus San Francisco hourly is the discrepancy there. So how do you build in your margin if you're going to a lower rate? So those are the challenges I see at the moment from an agency perspective of figuring out how we're going to navigate some of these kind of more complicated times. On the plus side, there's a lot of talent out there. So when projects come in, if you need to ramp up quickly, there's some great people that you can tap into to do that. But I think that's the biggest challenge, as far as I can tell at the moment. It's getting in front of people and getting projects closed. Those sales cycles are getting longer.
Yeah, I've definitely heard through this podcast that uncertainty is definitely having some impact. So, if you were able to solve immediately one internal issue at Comedia overnight, what would you fix and why is that such a pain point right now?
100% BD. 100% BD. The biggest bottleneck that we have and the biggest issues that we have, which I think, again, is very common with small agencies, is the business development side. Because it's just me, I tend to have to go and find the leads, qualify the leads, bring the leads through, and close the deals, right? So it's an end-to-end process, which is not very efficient. And then typically I'm then helping service and deliver the work. At a certain point, I need to go back to the beginning of that loop and start filling the top of the pipeline or the top of the funnel again. So without doubt, the first thing that if I could wave a magic wand would be to have a BD team, right? That is building out the decks, that is researching all the companies, is looking at their pain points, putting bespoke decks together, say, hey, we've seen this, this, and this is how we can help. None of it's rocket science, but it all takes time and resources. So that's the number one thing for on our side would be business development, having a more defined expectations and roles and people working at the different, like people filling the pipeline, people qualifying them, and then bringing leadership in to kind of talk and close those deals. So that's what I would change instantly if I could.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so now looking at the next 12 months, what are your top 2 to 3 goals that you've set for Comedia over the next year?
Again, partnerships, kind of building out those, talking to bigger agencies, smaller agencies, and seeing where there's opportunities for us to be able to help each other, move into different markets, move into different segments, and building out those and kind of getting some really solid partnerships together, getting Assembly, hopefully kind of really working and selling a bigger piece. Those are my main goals for this year. We have certain segments that we would love to work in. Sports is one that we're particularly keen on. Automotive is something we've done work in and really enjoy. So we have certain segments we're looking for. But as I say, given kind of the uncertainty, there's a lot of like, let's get through this year. Let's get through the next 12 months because we don't really know what's going to happen. And let's make sure that when things turn, as inevitably things do, that we have positioned ourselves to a place that we can grow from, right? So that we have the right team, we have the right client base, we have the right networks and connections, even if they're not necessarily closing short term because the sales cycles are so long. The next 12 months is make sure that we are positioned well and kind of building the tactic around that. Because it feels for the rest of this year is going to be, okay, there's going to be an element of we need to get through this year. As best we can. And then next year being like, okay, so now we're going to go after these 3 verticals, right? We're going to concentrate on 1, 2, or 3 or something like that. Whereas at the moment, it's a little bit more scattershot. It's like, we can do lots of different things. We've worked across lots of different industries. So I'm just reaching out across those. I would rather be kind of focusing on our core deliverables, but I think that's going to be another year out.
And so I always like to end with advice. So what advice would you give to other creative founders trying to build a sustainable, agency in today's market?
I think I'd like to walk back what I just said in most ways, but I think that's partly because we're 10 years old now. I think if I was starting out now, I would look to AI enablement. I think selling as here's what we can do to increase efficiencies. Because if we increase efficiencies, we reduce time, we reduce time, we reduce money, right? So here's how we're going to do that and have a real point of view of how AI or how your use of AI will impact the bottom line of X, Y, and Z company. I also think with that, you should be looking at, we're going to be med tech. We're going to just go after med tech, or we're just going to go after agriculture. We're going to go after automotive. Like, have a really defined point of view and have an area of expertise or an area of industry that you have expertise in that you have things to back that up with and go after specific people there rather than try and be cast too wide a net early on.
So kind of niche down on who you're targeting.
I think so. I think that makes sense because again, people are looking for very specific things, and increasingly, it's difficult if you go into something like, well, what have you done? In like, well, we haven't done anything. We can do it. We've done all these other things, but increasingly, well, what have you done in our sector? What have you done in our industry? So I think if you have kind of those things, be it enterprise SaaS, be it wearables, be it whatever it is, it's kind of like this is our point of view, and this is how we can make you money by bringing us in. You're going to save money from time, efficiencies of AI, but we're also going to build a beautiful product for you. If I was starting again now, is kind of how I would approach it.
And for anyone who wants to learn more about Comedia Design or connect with you, where's the best place?
I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for Chris Basey, and then comediadesign.com is our website. It's a little old now, looking a little tired, but it's up there.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into Mo's Market Pulse. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a comment, and join us again to hear more insights from leaders coming up on future episodes. And thank you, Chris, for spending some time with us today.